Fantastic. Thank you very much for that warm welcome and introduction. Good morning to everybody. My name is Stephen Wills, and I'll be working with our colleagues from Well Done Interpreters, and they will be helping me to facilitate and to work through the roughly 4 hours of workshop that we have for you this morning. So I'm really looking forward to sharing my knowledge with you. I look forward to your questions, and I'll give you some of the housekeeping in one moment. So just a quick introduction from me. Mariana was very helpful in giving you a quick introduction. So for me, my background, as was mentioned, is that I was a CPO for many years, and so I actually did the job, and I faced the challenges that many of you face, and I worked in financial services, manufacturing, and of course with the Olympic Games in London. So I'm going to tell you a bit about that later. So I now run a procurement consultancy and training and development company. We provide companies with academies and with training services, mainly bespoke training to their requirements, providing them with solutions to save money and lock in value. So I'll recap that, I'll bookend that at the end of the day, just to remind you who we are. But the main theme is that we are going to discuss, we're going to workshop, so this is about being interactive, it's about getting you to work with some colleagues, work in groups, as well as asking me questions. And I'm going to facilitate that, and we're going to discuss the merits of category management, and of course we're going to use the Olympic Games as the case study for you to discuss, and I've got an exercise for you on that. So let's start moving through the day. By the way, there's a PDF book. If you wish to have it, just let the organizers, Mariana or Victoria, know, and they will send you the cost-cutting book for your appreciation. So Procurement Central, we've visited many, we've unfortunately never been to the Ukraine. I was really looking forward to being with you today. But as you know from Mariana and Victoria, maybe yesterday, the whole world is in lockdown and restrictions on travel. So we're doing this virtually, but really looking forward to coming to see and meet you. But we've been to many regions across all of Europe and close to and around Asia. And we've worked with a number of companies, oil and gas, financial services, and manufacturing. And we help them with their challenges, with their people development, and with their objectives, which usually is to minimize risk and to save money. So as mentioned, if you want a copy of the cost-cutting book, do contact the organizers and we'll send out a PDF version of that. As you can see, we have a whole range of core courses that we deliver online, or what they call self-paced, meaning you can have them pre-recorded. Or you can have them bespoke and tailored to your company's needs. So we work with procurement functions all across the world, helping them in areas like category management. And obviously these days, that's all online. We have a whole range of trainers, as you can see there, including, if you're attending any of the supply chain management workshops, Paul Denman, who's a good friend and full of knowledge, as well as many others who are, we work closely with the CIPS, the approved body the professional body, and many are CIPS qualified. So let's talk a little bit about how we will work today, some ground rules for the workshop. So being a workshop is a bit different to just having a presentation like yesterday. The workshop is really about getting your interaction and your engagement. So I'll be leading that. I'll be sharing knowledge with you. I'll do my best to make the subject as interesting and as exciting as possible. And obviously my job is to keep things to time, and I will share the timetable with you in a moment. If you can work with me and work with each other. So if Mariana's still around, she's going to try and assist me in doing some breakout groups with you, probably around about 5 people in each breakout group, and get you to discuss some of the category management questions that I'm going to put to you. Some are what I would normally do if we were together. We try to make that role play, get you in the role of the procurement manager and me in the role of the business. So we're going to try that. We're going to try and workshop some questions and some approaches and get you to feedback through the interpreter to me and to share your knowledge and your feedback to those questions. Do ask questions. Mariana's mentioned that to you. Do ask questions. There is the Zoom facility, the question and answer facility. That might be the best thing to use. I can then pick that up in the breaks with the help of the well done interpretation team. And I can then feed back some answers to you when we come back after the break. But above all, I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have fun. I hope that, why should you have fun? You should have fun because when you have fun, you learn from it. And it's something that you take away and you remember. And that's the main purpose of why Procurement Central do this, why I do this. It's to get people to learn, it's to get people to enjoy what they do, particularly in these during these uncertain times. If you can help me, we suffered a bit yesterday with some feedback, so if you can help me, it sounds great by the way at the moment, but put the microphones on mute unless you wish to speak directly to me or to the interpreter. Then obviously you need to remember to unmute. I'm not sure we can use the cameras or I can see you, but certainly help me out with the audio by being on mute. By the way, the session is being recorded, just to let you know that. So let's talk a little bit about how the morning will run. So I'm in London, and those of you who know London, who visited London, will always know what the weather is. I don't need to tell you. Again, it's raining today and it's 7:15, so it's very dark. So I'm in London and you're a couple of hours ahead of me. So you're 9:15 and we're into session 1, and we've covered off a little bit about me and a little bit about the housekeeping. So we're going to start in a moment by going into category management and talking about initiating a business approach for category management. Category management is not all about procurement, and procurement need to remember that it is not all about them. This is the purpose of what they do, is to support the business and in some ways lead the business through category management and through the spend journey. So I'm going to talk a bit about initiating how we work with the business and how we get a full integrated approach to category management. So because of that, we're going to talk a bit about planning and stakeholder engagement. But in a moment, the very first thing I'm going to do, we're going to just see if we can get the breakout rooms going. I'm going to give you what we call in the training profession an icebreaker. I'm going to see if we can get you talking to each other and to break the ice and to get to know each other and to try to hear your feedback on the icebreaker that I'm going to give you in a moment. There will be in session 1, which is about an hour from now. We will break at 10:15 for a quick comfort break, a quick rest break for 15 minutes. That gives me time to look at your questions. But we'll have some interactive exercises in session 1 as well as the icebreaker. We'll then take our break, as I've mentioned. You can grab a coffee or some tea, and we'll come back at your time, 10:30, and we'll run with session 2. I will do my best to answer your questions that you've given during the first session, and I will then go into session 2. Now, session 2 is, shall we say, the main part of what we're going to be doing today. It's an interactive role play and exercise to get you to work together and to see how you answer the questions around category management, and then the actual case study around category management on the Olympic Games. So that is going to be very much the centerpiece to the workshop. In addition, we'll cover off some other important aspects associated with category management, strategic sourcing, tendering, and selection. Then we'll have our second break of the day. Again, I'll have a look through your questions, see if I can answer them, feed those back to you. And then we'll go into session 3, the last session of the day. Again, feeding back on the questions, just doing a quick recap of the morning. And the last session will be probably completing off the answers to the case study on the Olympic Games, and then talking about locking in some of the benefits. How do we sustain the benefits that we've seen through category management? Sometimes the benefits are theory, so we need to make sure that those benefits actually appear, what they say, down to the bottom line, and talk a little bit about how we do that through supplier relationship management, give you some of the models, and the project management. Project management features right the way throughout the case study of the Olympics, as well as working on category management. So there's a big part of this which is related to project management. And then finally, we'll talk about some of the tools that are available. So we've got a lot to cover. We're going to, and then obviously 1 o'clock we'll finish. So let's get into the icebreaker and let's see how we can work together in groups with Mariana's help. So Mariana, I don't know if you can, in a second, support me on putting people into some breakout groups. But what I'd like people to think about, we've got 2, shall we call it, abstract images there, 2 abstract images. Both have got wheels on them. Both have some form of engine to propel them forward, and both have a steering wheel, but they are quite different they are quite different vehicles. So I'd like you to take those abstract images, and I'd like you to creatively discuss in your groups of about 5. I think we're going to try and put you into groups of 5. Which is more like, let's start before we drop into category management, which is more like strategic procurement management as opposed to tactical procurement, and why? So which of these two vehicles is more like strategic procurement? So strategic procurement, you have maybe an idea of that. You have a view when you hear the expression strategic procurement, as opposed to tactical purchasing or buying. So which is more like strategic procurement, and why? While we're waiting, let me just give you a little bit of a definition of category management, because maybe you could discuss this in your groups as well and come back to me whether you agree or not. So here, there are many different definitions to category management. Category management here, I'm giving you one definition, but always remember, you know, many people, including yourselves, can define this in a different way. What I'm talking about, in my view, is something, a philosophy, an approach across a company, an organization. Doesn't have to be a business, can be a government function, and it permeates, it goes right the way through the organization. That's the great thing about being a professional procurement person or a category manager, is that you get to go right across the business. You're not locked into one part of it. You get to work from, as we will see in a moment, all the way through, from budgeting all the way through to, shall we say, supplier relationship management and contract management, and everything in between, working with the business, working right across the business. And one of the things that people in procurement need, as I was saying in the presentation, Mariana asked me this question about leadership, is we not only need to understand procurement and about category management, but we also need to understand the business as well. And sometimes what I find, many people have come from engineering, working in oil and gas, and they are now in procurement because they understand the business. So it's a philosophy that goes right the way through the organization. And then we can start to think about how, with the knowledge of the business and the importance of some of the spend, these activities and attitudes shape the spend categories. So I was saying that this helps us to shape the categories of spend, and with CrowdCheck, as we'll see towards the end of the day, it will we will talk about whether or not it's a non-critical item or whether it's a partnership spend category that we designate. But understanding the importance of spend items to the business is critical in how we categorize them. So welcome back, and it was a bit of an abstract exercise to get you thinking about what is the difference between strategic and tactical procurement. So does anybody have any comments from each of the groups? We split you into some groups. Maybe through the interpreter, you could give me some of your comments. I don't know which group would like to start. It doesn't matter. If somebody could just feedback on behalf of their group what they thought the difference was between a golf buggy and a Formula One car in relation to strategic procurement. Anybody have any feedback for me?
Кто-нибудь хочет прокомментировать?
Могу я рассказать от нашей группы то, что, к чему мы пришли.
Давайте, Ирина.
Общими усилиями. У нас было разное мнение и разное понимание задачи. Кто-то воспринял, что нужно описать стратегически, тактическую в плане самих машин, а кто-то понял, что именно продажи, какая или гоночная машина, или прогулочная машина, это стратегия или тактика. Но в обеих ситуациях мы пришли к единому мнению. Для нас спортивная машина – это тактика, а прогулочная – это стратегия. Почему? Во-первых, стратегия не может быть быстрой, скоростной, что ассоциирует с собой гоночная машина. Гоночная, буллит – это дорого, быстро, молниеносно. Это все-таки ассоциируется у нас с тактическими решениями. А вот прогулочная машина уже выверенная, временем, обдуманная, сконцентрированная задача, что ассоциируется со стратегией, которая определяется не одним днем и определяется не быстро. И второе мнение тоже совпадает, что гоночная – это тактика, а прогулочная – это стратегия. Это если рассматривать этот вопрос в плане, как будто мы фирма и продаем эти машины, занимаемся этими машинами. То есть спортивная машина – это тактическое решение, а прогулочная – стратегическое, поскольку прогулочная машина может помимо непосредственно машина для гольфа использоваться не только по прямому назначению, потом ее можно продавать и для парков, и для отелей. То есть ее можно в дальнейшем использовать в разных назначениях. И это больше стратегическая, грубо говоря, покупка. А гоночная машина, она используется только в гонках, поэтому это тактическое решение. Ну вот, в общем, так.
Thank you. That's a very excellent answer. And thank you for bringing me into your home, into your lovely kitchen. So that's very nice. I feel like you should be making me a coffee though. But thank you very much. That's a very good, comprehensive answer. So maybe we could go to one of the other, I'll summarize this in a moment, but maybe we could go to one of the other groups and just hear if they have some different views, some different comments to make.
Да, добрый день. Здравствуйте. Я бы хотел озвучить мнение нашей группы. У нас как раз полностью противоположное мнение с коллегами. Значит, мы пошли по другому принципу. Мы посчитали, что поскольку стратегические закупки – это закупки, которые в первую очередь нацелены на максимальный результат, получение максимального эффекта для нашей компании, они требуют, значит, определенных усилий. Мы посчитали по такому принципу, что гоночный болид – это гораздо более сложный в изготовлении автомобиль, который требует навыков гораздо больших, нежели изготовление автомобиля для гольфа. Но в дальнейшем он дает гораздо более эффективный результат при проведении закупок нашей компании. Поэтому у нас, в принципе, единогласное было решение касательно того, что гоночный болид – это про стратегию.
Okay, thank you very much. maybe time if we could just have one other comment, one other group, and then I'll give a quick summary on the icebreaker.
May I?
Please, please, yes.
This is the opinion purely mine, because in my group we have different opinion, which is good.
Good, absolutely,
which
very
is
good.
Which is perfect, and the opinion of my colleague from my group is that the valid is, of course, the example of strategy and the example of work when the many different team and then engineers and service and the many others work together. My opinion is it depends on the strategy of the company. Anything can be considered as strategic. It depends on what the company or the organization needs. For example, if the organization needs green energy and, for example, some smooth relations with the customers, some maybe luxury, so then we have this small cart for small golf machine. If the organization needs to win, needs to attract sponsors, needs to be the first, then of course it is valid. This is purely my opinion, and I would like to hear another opinion.
Okay, so I think we've got, thank you, Yulia. We've got 3 excellent answers there. That's exactly what I was hoping for, because one thing I learnt that when I started to do procurement, professional procurement, one thing I learned was the phrase that Yulia's used, it all depends. And this is something that we come back to time and time again. It all depends. And the whole purpose of this is not for the right or the wrong answer, of course. It's an icebreaker. It's just to get you to do what you've been doing, talking, thinking. It could be, in my opinion, if it was me, I would be saying probably the racing car, because it costs more money. If you're doing strategic procurement, you need a team. You know that these racing cars need specialists for wheels, for the engine, the driver. But as we heard right at the beginning, some people, because as Julia said, it all depends. Some people see it as the golf buggy. From my experience, the golf buggy is a bit more limited, but it serves its purpose. There's a time and a place where the golf buggy is essential and is the right approach. So there is no, shall we say, magic answer. As you said right at the end, it all depends. It all depends on your business, what kind of business you're doing. And that's why we looked at procurement. It all depends what you're trying to do, what your approach is. But remember, as we will see with some of the models a little bit later in the morning, we don't have a one size fits all. We need to adapt and be agile to suit the needs of the business, and also depending on the type of category that we're looking at. That was excellent. That's exactly what I was hoping for. So thank you for that. Let's move on now and just cover off some of the, I want to try and do, if we can, one more exercise before we get to the this morning's first break. So I'd like to move on. So I was just explaining one definition to you, which is the category management definition of an organizational philosophy that goes all the way through the organization, but it also has, you can't do category management on its own. You need to add to that, and you need to be thinking about the business and link up with the stakeholders, the customer requirements, what's happening in the supply markets, and so on. So that is my view. And again, you will have a different view, a different definition, just like you did on the car. You may agree with that, you may not agree with that, but it will suit, the definition will suit your company and your business. So let's get into session one and just cover off some of the information so that when we start session two, we can start to look at the case study. So all of procurement revolves around five rights of procurement. And some of these you will know, many of you will know off by heart. It's not just, in fact, it never, in my opinion, is about price. It's about the total cost of ownership. But you always have to balance price with quality and, of course, making sure that things are delivered on time at the right location. So I was just saying that the five rights of procurement are easy to remember. That it's not just about the lowest price. It's never about the lowest price. It's about the total cost, but it's also balancing that with the quality of the goods and the services and making sure that they're delivered to the right place on the right time. So what we do is very much a balancing act. It's very much a comprehensive profession that looks at more than one thing. It's also very much category management, a spend journey, a journey that goes all the way through from understanding the business, what do the business need, rather than what they want. We all know that they might want a very expensive and very specialist solution, but what do they really need? So understanding what the business needs, we need to be part of that process. We need to be part of that discussion to challenge the business in some regards, not just accept what we're being told. Right the way through to understanding the marketplace, what's going on in the world, particularly at the moment, what's happening with the sourcing, which suppliers are best suited to our business. Again, as Julia said, it all depends what our emphasis is, what our priorities are, the kind of suppliers that we'll be evaluating and selecting before we award a contract. And then, of course, with category management, it's not just the selection, it's all the way through end to end on the spend journey, looking at managing and contracting and managing the supplier, again, to continually look for improvements beyond what is in the contract and the service level agreement. It's worth mentioning about having the governance. Governance is procurement's friend. Having strong control for people to follow, and this is the nature, I think, of the exercise I want to run before the break, just to think about what governance means. I'm a big supporter of governance, having the right procedures, the right process, the right documents in place for people to follow. As you can see here, the right protocols, the right structure, as well as the key performance indicators to measure, but making sure that the business comply with our governance is essential to get us to the place that we need to be, meaning the supplier that's selected, meaning the performance of that supplier to our requirements. So having a set of governance is key, having policies that the business can follow, having rules, if you like, that they must adhere to. Now, I want to go into an exercise with you, so another breakout, just to discuss, here we go, just to discuss some questions around this, because not all of the business agree with us, not all of the business see what we're bringing them is a benefit. So Mariana, I don't know if you're with me, whether we could just click the button to ask our colleagues and friends if they can go back to the breakout groups. But the question I have for your breakout groups again is, do you think, or what do you think the business believes we do? What do you think the business, tell me what you think the business think of us? Are we seen as a leader? Are we seen as somebody with authority? Or are we just somebody who jumps and supports the business with a service? And how should our value be measured in the business? How should we be fed back to? Thank you. If I could just ask people if they wouldn't mind putting their cameras, if you're comfortable to put your cameras on, that would be great. Just so we can see. Yes, Julia, yeah, I got you. That's great. Hey, thank you. Hey, hello. So thank you for doing that. And I was just saying, if you can feedback to me, if we could just have maybe, I can see one or two, there's Nico there, Stepan, so Anna, maybe we can have Olga, thank you. So Olga, maybe I could just ask for one or two people to, Sergey perhaps, just to feedback from their groups that we just had and tell me what you believe the answers to those three questions were. Olga, how do you feel about answering that? Or Natalia?
Друзья, давайте, включайтесь.
Коллеги, я могу начать от нашей группы. Раньше нас представляла Ирина. Вот. Обсуждая ответы на эти три вопроса, мы сравнивали наш опыт работы в разных компаниях и на самом деле пришли все к единому мнению, что все зависит напрямую от того бизнеса, где ты работаешь. И есть бизнесы, которые делают очень большую ставку на procurement, и procurement действительно расценивается как лидер в данной компании, да, оценивается его value, который он может принести. Но есть и компании, которые, например, считают закупки как вспомогательной функцией, да, и очень часто расцениваются закупки как функция, которая, наоборот, усложняет процесс бизнеса какими-то своими дополнительными процессами, которые утяжеляют функцию закупок. Вот. И как бы точно так же, ну, как ценность, которую закупки могут принести для бизнеса, с нашей точки зрения, это, естественно, как наши основные KPI экономия, да, которую мы можем достигнуть. Ну и основная наша как бы цель – это чтобы товары, услуги в нужном количестве, качестве, своевременно были доставлены там, в ту точку или там, в соответствии с тем объемом услуг, которые нужны нашему заказчику. Вот, как-то так.
Thank you very much, Anna. Thank you for that. Natalia, what was your feedback from your group, please?
Добрый день. От нашей группы, в принципе, ответы похожи, вот как к предыдущей группе, которая выступала. Также мы обсудили, что именно как лидер закупок, как лид или как саппорт зависит от бизнеса. Но в большинстве случаев действительно отдел закупок воспринимают как саппорт. Чем мы можем измерить, как бизнес может измерить нашу ценность? Это проявляется в наших сейвингсах, в выборе поставщиков, которые предоставляют все услуги, товары, действительно в качестве в хорошем, в определенные сроки поставки, выполняют все условия договора. Вот, в принципе, так.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you. So I often hear the word support, and I think that's quite a passive word. And I guess, you know, my view is about category management is the approach for us to, as Mariana was asking me in the presentation yesterday, our leadership skills to be assertive, to challenge more, particularly around the needs of the business. That's what this first session is about. It's about our relationship with the business. I don't see it as a, obviously it's a professional relationship, but it should be an assertive relationship because procurement have a leadership role to play. And after the break, which we're going to go to now, we're going to go into the case study that I've designed, and we're going to do more breakouts to discuss the particular case study about why we can demonstrate or how we can demonstrate value to the business. So let's take our first break. I think, Irina, your husband's already made the first break. He's already brought your coffee and maybe some toast, I don't know.
You're asking me?
Maybe a nice pastry, maybe a pastry.
I'm a studio now, not at home. Otherwise, my husband will help me.
Okay, let's take a break, 15 minutes. I suggest
I propose 12 minutes. It's
12
enough
minutes.
will be. Yeah.
Okay, exact Ukrainian timekeeping. So 12 minutes and then stay logged on and then come back. Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Have a good coffee, good.
So just to recap from the first session, the point of the first session was to align ourselves with the business, to make sure that the business sees us as a leader, sees us as somebody who complements and adds value to the business, not as a support function that just does what we're told. So the business relationship with category management is essential and critical, and the categorization of our goods and services, hopefully you can see this slide here talking about the different types of categories that we have, meaning IT is a specialist spend category, meaning buildings, facilities management, putting a category together around corporate solutions with travel, cars, if we're a kind of company that has cars. Of course, travel these days is very limited, but it used to be quite a big category. And of course, perhaps a people category containing consultancy and professional services. So yes, we listen to the business, we listen to customers as well as the suppliers. That's one of the roles we have, but it's very much bringing our knowledge, bringing our specialism of the market and the knowledge of what's happening in the market into the business to adapt and to shape the decisions that are made. The decisions do not rest with only the business and then us to carry them out. we contribute to the decision-making process through the categorization of spend. Just one other slide from this morning, the first session this morning, is just this one about understanding and prioritizing who it is we need to stay focused on in the business. So some of all of our internal clients, all of the internal business people are important, but of course some, meaning the key players on this four-box model, are more important than others. So those people are where we have people who are very interested in what we're doing and have, shall we say, some source of power, legitimate power in their title, or they're an expert in their field. So all of the people that we come into contact with maybe are important, but some are more important than others. So here we've got the four-box model, and not all of the stakeholders are in the top right-hand corner, meaning a key player. So some we don't put as much effort into, some are copied in on our emails, some we will give an update to keep them satisfied, but it's determining which of our stakeholders we give our time to. Okay, let's move on into, so we've had our break. Hopefully people are refreshed and ready now for the case study that I want to through in the workshop with you. So this is session 2, and now we drop into category management, shall we say, real time. So having set the scene about the business, having set the scene around the requirements of the business and how we should be working in the business, not as a passive role, not as just a service, but in a leadership function, we now move into what category management might look like if we simulate this in real time. So the first part, before we just drop into the Olympics case study, is just to say that the 6-step process that we would use, and I believe the slides will be sent, and that you'll discuss these with IPSM to get the slides. But the slides, I beg your pardon, but the 6-step process, really, if we think about project management, as I mentioned at the beginning, we're thinking here about the things to do with category management in the preparation stage before we embark on a category, before we start to develop the category. What are the things that we need to prepare? How should we shape the category? What family should the category belong to? So I've given you some key questions about the scope of change. If you think about something like media, if you think about something like IT, you need to scope it. You need to limit the beginning and the end of it. You need to think about who those key stakeholders are, the ones that have the power and the interest. You need to think about the business objectives to consider, as well as having probably a nice simple checklist to do around the category that you're going to be launching. Category management can be centralized. You can have a big center-led function, or of course you can have people in the regions, in the units, in the operating companies who are empowered to lead the category at a local level. So part of the initiation, part of the preparation is how we structure category management in our companies, how we devolve it into the operating companies, and this is part of the role play that I'm going to give you later, is to get you to think about how you would work at a central in a central procurement function with an operating company. At the base of all category management, there's probably 4 things to remember, just as a summary, is that we need to get the buy-in of the business. That doesn't mean we just do as we're told, but we need to get the buy-in of the business so that we've got the customer requirements. We need to get something that's better, meaning something that's an improvement, something that is different from what we have now and better from what we have now. We need hard data and facts to support that, and we need to demonstrate that we're delivering benefits, probably through some key performance indicators. Part of what we do is, somebody, I think it was Anna, that was saying to us, is that we do identify opportunities, and sometimes, in all cases, perhaps it's about cost reduction. So cost reduction is usually one of our opportunities that we're using category management for, but it can be other things as well. It can be improving our quality. It can be making it faster or safer. So there's a range of benefits that we're looking for in our opportunity analysis. And here again, I've provided you with a checklist of things that you would need to do in terms of gathering data, looking at segmenting that data in the portfolio analysis, undertaking perhaps a market search, looking at the supply market, and so on. Usually, again, around getting buy-in from the stakeholders, getting support from the business, we're looking at getting a presentation done to get support from the business. So this is something where we're taking this to the business to say, are they approving of what we're doing? So here's our plan. Here's what we're doing. What we don't want to do is to put a lot of work in and a lot of effort into change and then find that, in fact, the business are not with us, that they're not on the journey with us. So it's important at the early stage to get buy-in. And again, if you get a copy of the presentation, you have a checklist to follow there. Then, of course, like all good project management, it's all about the implementation. It's all about having done the preparation, having got the buy-in from the business. It's all about, can we successfully implement? Like any good contract management, contract implementation, it's all about making sure that we can put that in place and derive the benefits from it. So what I'd like you to do, the first of 3 exercises in this session, is I'd like you to go back to your groups, and I'd like you to consider this question. What challenges are you facing when you're trying to make change, when you're trying to implement and operate category management within your business? So I'd like you to think about that question, and perhaps the interpreter can share that with you.
Mm-hmm. Хорошо, Стив, да, переведите.
Okay, Steve, So how much time do we give for this exercise?
So I think if we could just have 6 minutes, that would be very helpful. Okay, if you could help me, if you're comfortable, just to put your cameras on, that would be great, so I can see you. So I can see Sergey and Alexander and Natalia and Stepan, Irina. Okay, so thank you for doing that exercise. These exercises are, you know, like if you're in sport, that the exercise you do before the main event, like if you're a soccer player, you warm up, or if you're an athlete, you warm up. So these exercises are to warm us up for probably the next role play, or the first role play, but the next event that we're going to do, which is a little bit more serious, a little bit more complex than the questions that I'm asking you. But let's just get your feedback. Perhaps, Stepan, you could give me some feedback from your breakout group on the question that was asked.
Okay, should I answer in English or I can speak Russian?
I'd like you to answer it in French for me.
In French?
No, no.
I will answer in Italian. Questo è non possibile perché io non so French.
Very good. So English will be perfect, my friend. English is good.
Okay, frankly speaking, I don't have exact issue right now with category management because I'm not involved in it, or I'm not in charge in it. But what I know exactly, that main constraints and main issues that appear in category management, there are several. So if we consider, for example, product portfolio, it must be balanced. But first of all, it must fit and must reflect the company strategy, operational strategy, and it must be balanced. This is the main constraint because some products could occupy another one and vice versa. And when you don't have a balanced enough portfolio, you can face a situation when you are not able to satisfy all requirements on the market. And what else? The meantime, persons in charge of category management, they need to understand market from the sourcing point of view, because you can today, okay, not today because of pandemic situation, but in, let's say, normal time, you can obtain products or goods from all over the world. And you need to have a very extensive database of suppliers. So, and you need to consider them all. So if you want to buy on local market, on global market, so the main issue also arises here, because you need to make like right decision. And what else? So you need to have a good team to manage your product category, and specific knowledge. People who manage it need to have specific knowledge if you, for example, have a niche product.
So, yep, no, thank you. That's a very comprehensive list of challenges that we might face. So, Sergey, what about you? Can you add to those challenges, or do you see it from a different perspective?
Okay, just a moment, I will switch in Russian. Да, все.
Yes.
Steve, мы обсуждали.
Well, we have discussed in our little group of 2 only, and I was telling about my own experience. In my opinion and my understanding, the main complications or challenges we may face while we implement category management or strategy is the search of common goals and tasks, I would say, on the way of this implementation, and then performance. If the internal customer, in our case, the bank.
Если отвечать на вопрос, с какими сложностями мы сталкиваемся, это в первую очередь сложности достижения договоренностей о единых целях и задачах.
So to be in agreement and to do the deal, it sounds like what you're saying is it's having the right version of category management to suit in the case that you mentioned, financial services could be quite different, as Julia was saying, with it all depends, could be quite different to, let's say, a hotel or a hotel chain or manufacture a pharmaceutical. So it all depends on your business and, shall we say, the variety, the adaptation of category management that best fits your business. So it's not one version of category management for everybody. Would that be what you're saying?
Well, yes. Steve, maybe about that, and that already developing the category, in our case, in spite of the financial business, well, we are the bank, we are more transforming into an IT company now, because our procurement volume is more than 60% is IT equipment and services. So those are our main categories we are working with. And I just wanted to mention that implementing such a category, for instance, with the IT as the main customer, internal customer, we need to make a deal, an agreement. What's our common goal? What we're trying to achieve and why we exist as the procurement? What we'll do and which value we'll add into the process and the outcome. So this is the agreement between the procurement and internal customer.
Very good. Very good. Thank you very much. Can we move on now? Because I'd like to go to the next exercise, which I call a role play. And I appreciate that as we are virtual, the role play is going to be slightly different to the role play if we were live. But let's just finish the 6 steps. So we talked about the implementation, we've talked about the presentation, and we've talked to get buy-in, the agreement that Sergey was talking about, get agreement with the business, get them on side. We've talked about what exactly this category management is trying to do for us, the opportunities, and we talked about the preparation, having the facts and the data available to us. One of the biggest challenges that I believe we face, which was the nature of this question, what are the challenges? One of the biggest challenges is, and it may be different for you, is we don't always know what we spend, which sounds incredible, but when you're working for a big organization, you can have your management information can be quite disparate and dysfunctional. So one of the big challenges in the preparation stage of category management is we don't always know what we spend on the categories and with the suppliers. So let's just say that we face many challenges. As Stepan said, people is one, having the right level of competence in our organization. As Sergey said, having the buy-in, the agreement as to what version of category management we're going to adopt, having the figures available to us to size the benefits. So we face many challenges when we're implementing change in an organization, but in particular, bringing in category management. Then, of course, we have to, after we've implemented, we have to maintain category management. And usually, like any good last stage in a process, we look to not just continue with it, but to improve and to enhance it. What I'd like to do now is spend a little bit more time, and I believe we're going to allow about 20-25 minutes on this one, so I'm going to have to allow the interpreter time to read this to you, to convert this to you. I want you to think about...
I do apologize, Steve. I do see the screen, but it would be much more helpful if you read and I interpreted, if you don't mind, of course.
No, of course, that's fine.
Thank you.
That is what I was going to do. But,
oh, thank you. Well, I'm interpreting everything, so whatever you say, I am interpreting. Thank you.
That's fine, that's fine. The role play is as follows. The background is that we are a new team, you are leading a new team, and you are meeting with one of the key stakeholders that we talked about earlier. And the key stakeholder is Steve Wills, and he's managing director, so he's got power, he's got legitimate power, and he's got a big interest in the category that you are responsible for. And of course, if it helps you, I suggest that you think of a category that you have in your own business, if it's financial services or whatever. You think about IT. IT is always an obvious one. So you're meeting with the business, a business owner, a key stakeholder. He's managing director of operations at the ABC company. The headquarters of the company is in Kiev, and it's got operations across Europe. It's a 10 billion turnover company. The stakeholder, Steve, is a big budget holder, which means he's got many spend categories. But let's say that, as I think it was Sergey said, 60% IT. So let's say the spend categories you're going to go and talk to him about are around IT. Because Steve, the stakeholder, has no experience in procurement category management. He doesn't know what that is. He doesn't understand it. So you are already going to have a task, a challenge to explain that. Steve has publicly said across the organization that when he's come across working with procurement, that the process and procedures, the governance that we talked about, is boring and slows down the business on its important mission, on its important tasks. So he's not a great fan of what he has seen. He believes that as a customer, procurement is slow and does not add value to his business. So you're going to have to address that with him. You should explain the benefits of category management for this stakeholder, and what, not only the benefits for his operation, but what Steve, what's going to change for Steve. So you've asked for a meeting to come and meet Steve so you can explain to him and negotiate, as Sergey said, to get an agreement with Steve on how this is going to work. and what Steve has got to do as the stakeholder and his operating company to get these benefits. So, Mr. Interpreter, are we good? Are you still talking?
I'm always talking, Steve. Don't worry. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Was that all good for you?
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel we're bonding. We're becoming firm friends now. So let's talk about the task. So when you go into your breakout groups, have a few minutes to just collect your thoughts. Just think about what you want to cover in this first meeting. If we had the whole day ahead of us, we would have a follow-up meeting. So, but think about this first meeting and think about what you want to cover, what you want to address, and you've been given the background then. Then you should work in the breakout and decide if you obviously have any questions, if you want to put any questions to Steve or challenges, because you're not passive. You are not passive. You are not just a no problem, you know, someone who keeps saying, no problem, Steve, we'll do anything you say. You may have a problem with Steve because he doesn't see the value of what you're doing. So you should be a leader in this meeting. So just have 20, 25 minutes in total, and then we'll bring you back. So Mr. Interpreter, 25 minutes for the teams to work, and then we bring them back, and then we discuss what they've said. Is that okay, everybody?
Стив, я думаю, что все...
Steve, I think that everyone is pro that, they don't mind, and that we can begin even with this role play exercise. Now we have 13 minutes past 11 by Kyiv time, so I would suggest that at 11:35, that will be 22 minutes, the people will have 22 minutes to come back to the main room, and we will discuss what have been developed by the groups. Do you agree with me?
So thank you for doing that exercise. What did we learn? How did we face off to Steve? And what did we explain to Steve, who doesn't think procurement add value? He thinks that the processes are boring, and he thinks that it takes too long. So, Irina, what was your view in your group? You had quite a big group, 5 people, I think, in your group. So what was the consensus of how you are going to talk to Steve? What is your feedback to Steve in your meeting?
Мы выбрали Наталью с
So
нашей...
we have chosen Natalia to be the speaker.
Okay. All right. Where's Natalia?
Yeah.
Show yours.
That's me.
Natalia, thank you.
У нас по черзі ми презентуємо.
So we will present one by one from each room for everybody to express their own opinion in this conference. So in this role play, we had 2 questions. The first question was the following. To tell about category management for Steve, what can be a benefit for Steve as the implementation of category management? We decided to focus upon detalization of his business and of all of the resources. So he will be able to see which directions and how much expenses or spends will be done for him, which directions and trends are worth it. And also, detalization will give him an opportunity to see which KPIs can be seen in which spheres. So, what could be the developing sphere and which sphere could be cut, for instance, or not used anymore. And secondly, what could Steve do in his company? I think that we should consider category management as it is and to support it, because as he really is satisfied with all of that, and he will, as an owner or a manager of this business, he will support it, he will show that his business will go along the way of a kind of a more economic and strategic way. So he will support it, and we will distribute his business. We will see in more details where the expenses are going to, where we have the spends, not the wholesome flow of procurement when you just procure IT equipment, but he will see all of the detailed provisions. He will understand which procurements can be done in a more efficient and savings way.
So thank you, Natalia. So you seem very confident that Steve will support this. So obviously you're going to be very influential to get him to support this. However, what do you think, and this is open to anybody to tell me, what do you think the consequence will be if Steve does not follow this? What do you think the issues will be if Steve does not follow category management?
Well, the company itself may not develop. They will be just waste money without thinking onto the spheres which either don't breed any revenue or enough of a revenue, and the allocation of budget won't be done properly.
Okay, thank you very much. So maybe we could switch to another group and I could get some feedback from one other group, please. I don't know who is the nominated speaker for another group.
Hello, let me try.
Who is that, please? Anna?
Anna, yes, that's Anna.
Thank you.
So we had a big group. There were lots of us, 8 of us, no, 7 of us, I do apologize. So we have discussed the following, that the meeting with Steve should be begun with us telling him what category management is. We would list certain cases and examples how we manage other categories, not the one he's interested in, but any other one. And we would tell a bit what we already managed and coped to get to know about the category which Steve is interested in particular IT, because we have already conducted the preliminary analysis and we've analyzed it, so we know the main allocation of expenses and spends, and we can see the opportunity to improve the efficiency of this category management. The next thing we'd mention that category management itself is not a tool which can just help to decrease the price, to reduce the price. It is a tool which helps you to increase the efficiency of spends. It gives us an opportunity to use the money in the most efficient way. So we are speaking not only just about the price, we're speaking about the total cost of ownership. We are analyzing the category in a deeper way. And while analyzing the category and the market of this category, we should definitely always see the new trends. And we know about the innovative technological solutions. So it may help us and him as an operational director to be the most efficient in the management of his sphere, to be the leader at the market, because we will help him to use the most leading technologies and solutions which are given by the market. We will inform him about that, we'll make him aware, and he will be able to take the decisions where to spend money and what will be the most efficient for the business. And the last point, we will tell that our main task is to help Steve himself to achieve his aims and KPIs, and we will ask him. In the end, we would like to involve him into this dialogue to get to know which main aims he appoints for himself, and just to explain him how we will be able to help him to achieve those goals and aims, as in the procurement and in the category management, those are not the processes, those are the strategy. And this is the main task to achieve in any internal department of customers, to achieve their strategic goals and altogether to achieve the strategy in the company.
Very, very good, Anna. Thank you. Very comprehensive. So just picking up on one point that you made, because it's a very important point. People say, know your audience, know your audience. And when you're speaking to a senior person in the organization, they will be thinking in their head, so what? So what is in it for me? What is the advantage of changing my, in this case, procurement practices? What is the advantage for me? And I think you highlighted that very well. Some of it was KPIs, improved performance, but the other thing that you identified was, you know, Steve himself. This could be, he could be, let's call it the case study in the business that is adopting category management, and show people, showcase it across all of the other operating companies as a center of excellence. So when we are pitching to people, know who it is that we are talking to and know what might be of interest to them. Because as we've said, as Julia said right at the beginning of today, it all depends on our business, what type of category, and Sergey said this, what type, the agreement, what type of agreement we have with the business for the version of category management, but also know the people. What is in it for Steve? What is he going to get personally and from the business of working with you? So I think that was a very good point you made. Okay, now I need to have, this is not a course in negotiation, but I need to have a negotiation with you. So this is real life, this is a real negotiation. My negotiation is that I want to incorporate the next rest break into the case study that I'm going to run with you, because I have an enemy, and that is time. Time is pressing, and I only have like 1 hour, 15 minutes left with you. I'm already feeling that we're one big family, and that we're all best friends, but we now need to consider how we're going to run the next 1 hour, 15 minutes. And the big thing I want to do right this second is to incorporate the Olympic game case study in the breakout groups that we've been working in for the next part of our time. But can I, do I have your agreement that we could incorporate the comfort break, the rest break in the next session? Would that be acceptable to you? You can say da, or you
Друзья,
could say
сейчас
yes.
речь идет о том,
Dear friends, we are speaking that now we've planned a break, but
как всегда это бывает,
as always it happens, we're a bit out of schedule. So we are suggesting you to have an hour and a quarter to work without any breaks. Don't you mind?
те, кто включили
Those who are
видео,
with the camera on, would you nod at least, or would you write a plus in the chat? You don't mind. Okay.
да. В общем-то, махание так или махание так.
Okay, Steve. The nods means that we don't mind. Everybody is pro that. We are moving on. Nobody asks the interpreter, so we are waiting for the case about the Olympics.
Okay. The interpreter, it's one big break for the interpreter. He's always having a break, so he can have coffee anytime. So let's move into our next case study. Let me see if I can share this. So let's start talking about the case study of the Olympic Games. So I need to give you some context, some background, and to just give you a little bit of information, not to explain to you what is the Olympic Games, you all know that, but it's a big national event for your country. It's a big showcase of what your country is all about. It has lots of cultural activities with artists and events, as well as the sport as well. So behind all of it sits, of course, IT, other services, transport, facilities management, cleaning, of course, security, which we're going to talk about, and catering. So it's got a lot of categories, and categories is at the heart of the Olympic Games and indeed at the heart of the case study I'm going to discuss with you. This is the governance, which is coming up on the screen now. So in the governance, you can see everything up to supplier relationship management, meaning the initiation and the preparation, the gathering of data that we talked about in the 6-step stages, the 6 stages of category management, talking about the category strategy, talking about supplier sourcing, strategic sourcing, and then putting a contract around that with the appropriate supplier. And running through all of this, you've got things like sustainability. We had something called legacy when I was working with the Olympic Games, meaning that by building stadiums in deprived areas of London and across the UK, we were giving something back in a legacy for the regions that made it better, that there was something sustainable coming out of the games for the future. And also things like diversity and inclusiveness, making sure that everybody was part of this. There was no barrier on people's physical ability or their race. So let's talk about some of the project challenges, because this was category management within a project, and it had some big challenges which you probably would not get in the normal running of a business. You had a deadline that you could not renegotiate. We had dignitaries coming from all across the world to see the opening of the Olympic Games, and so the deadline, the opening date, could not be moved. We could not put it back and say, let's do it next week or next month. We had a fixed deadline, and in fact, throughout the organization, there was a big calendar that counted down the days that we had left to deliver the Olympic Games. We had something called an unprecedented set of requirements. We hear this word a lot, unprecedented in the pandemic. This is unprecedented time that we live in. These were an unprecedented set of requirements. They're the kind of things, the kind of requirements, the kind of categories you don't get by every day of the year as part of your professional procurement career. So we had a very broad range of categories, and they were a lot of variety and very different. The money was, shall we say, government, which meant that it was our money, that it was a taxpayer's money. Somebody said this morning about one of the challenges of category management was finding the right people. It could have been Sergey who said that this morning. And indeed, resource constraints, people were a challenge. When you're running a project, you cannot always, like in an organization, recruit people for the rest of their career. You only have a short lifespan, a time span with them in the project. So finding people was very difficult. And finding the right level of skills was very difficult because it was what's called a temporary organization. There was something called London 2012, and this as part of the regeneration of these areas, and we needed to support that. There was a whole range of those key stakeholders in government and in the Olympics who we needed to satisfy. And every day when I went home from the office, I was, not me personally, but what I was doing was on the front of the newspaper, front page news. Security was a big subject for everyone in the country to talk about. There had been previously an attack in London. Buses and the underground had been hit by bombers, and consequently security was a front page story in the media. So to do this, we needed to have the very best suppliers, the very best quality. And there were 250 companies. We wanted to make sure that it wasn't all the big companies who had all the big contracts. We wanted to make sure that some SMEs, some small and medium-sized enterprises got contracts. We wanted to make sure that this was good right across the UK, not just in London, but that people benefited from it outside of London, but that the UK as a whole did benefit from having the Olympic Games. So business was awarded across the UK, and there was about 500 suppliers which considered themselves to be in an exclusive club. And this was critical to the Olympics and to, in fact, the British team. And again, we remember everybody's involved, sustainability and inclusiveness. No one is excluded. So let's talk about the situation that we find ourselves in. The situation with security was that we had, following the terrorism attack, we had a demand that we needed to step up the security spend. And it had originally been budgeted around about 100 million. And consequently, it was now considered to be around about 350 million to fund the security that would make people safe, that the country felt would make them safe. So the requirements and the spend trebled. So obviously we went through that, and we thought about that, and we thought about whether the requirements could be challenged, meaning the specification, but more importantly, if they couldn't, then what we needed to do was to make sure that the spend was appropriate for those requirements, and that we were not spending excess money and getting no return. There had been a supplier appointed. A company I can tell you now was G4S, who you may come across in the world, because they're not just a UK supplier, they're in all parts of the world. And there was no obvious leverage. They'd had the contract, time was against us. There was about a year left before the game started. So there was a lot of pressure to agree a brand new contract and award the additional business to G4S in around about 4 weeks so they could get started. And security had the highest profile and the biggest spend of all the categories in the Olympic Games. So there was a very complex set of demands that had been given to me to deliver the new revised program. That included what they call a program management office. It included security people and dogs, the whole logistics, moving those people around, where those people would stay, getting them trained, as we've said before, recruiting those resources, particularly as it was just a limited period. I think there was something like 20,000 guards that we needed to find. Having some sort of a center for them where they could meet and they could get some training, having IT requirements for clocking in and clocking out, uniforms, etc. And this came, as I've said, to about, on paper at the time, about 350 million. There were, and as I've said, there were, in addition to that, there was scanning equipment, CCTV, fencing, all the type of things you would expect for a safe and secure event like the Olympic Games. And also because it was a limited time, it was a temporary organization. People, not only was it difficult to find people, it was very difficult to keep them. And some of them were already, people were leaving. There was a lot of rotation of people because of the temporary organization. So this is a bit of background. So what I want you to do now for around about, let's see, 20 minutes is I want you to work together, and I want you to think about in your breakout groups how you would respond to the demands of the supplier. They want you to agree all of those additional requirements that I've just listed there with the program management office, the IT, and the recruitment of people. They want you to sign a contract. They are telling you that the games, you will stop the Olympic Games. You will be personally responsible for delaying the Olympic Games if you do not sign the new purchase order for this additional requirement, these additional requirements. So you are in a very difficult position. So what I want to know from you is you are being held to demand, being held to account by G4S to give them the authority to go and spend your money, the taxpayers' money. So I want you to role play this and tell me 5 things that you would do in the current circumstances using your category management skills. What would you do to respond back to, I mean, maybe you say, I would just agree. Maybe one of the things, I have no leverage and I just agree. I hope you won't say that. But if you don't say that, then you need to tell me 5 things that you would do using your category management skills so that you can feel that you have the full, that you are spending the money correctly, that the Olympics are spending their money fairly and correctly, and more importantly, you will get the outcome that you wish. So I want you to respond back to me in about 20 minutes, please, with your group's feedback on 5 things that you would do to respond back to the demands of the supplier. Is that clear?
Хорошо, сейчас...
Okay, then now, Steve, we are again working in breakout groups, in the same groups we used to have, right?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. The same groups. The description of that has been seen in the case which was sent out to you beforehand. There is the description there and the questions as well. And now you're working for 20 minutes. Our technical support will send out the same invitations to the same groups.
Thank you.
Send
Yes.
you to the rooms for 20 minutes.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, have a successful work.
Thank you.
И мы уже все вместе
Yes,
здесь.
we're all here, back. Thank you, perfect. So the exercise was done. Just a second.
Коллеги, я уже в эфире. Так, Стивен.
So, Stephen, now we are discussing a case. Everybody has come back. Perfect. So I give the floor to Stephen.
Okay. So I was having some excellent conversations. As I told you before, my biggest regret, well, I have 2 regrets. One is that we're not together in Kiev, obviously, because we would be having a fantastic time. But my second regret is that we don't have the rest of the day to carry on with this discussion. So, because only now, with maybe half an hour left, are we really starting to have some very high value conversations with each other. So if I may perhaps ask my new, the Americans call them besties, don't they? If you have a best friend, my new bestie, Dimitri, maybe he could just kick off following the conversation, because I couldn't stop him speaking. So I think he should keep speaking now and include everybody. So Dimitri, can you come in?
Do you hear me well?
Yeah, we hear you well, my friend. So why don't you just summarize the conversation that we were just having?
Well, I will not talk about what we've already discussed with Steve, but first what we've done, we created a leverage. We created a leverage on this company. We recognized what they want and we understand how to use it. And second thing, which we've not discussed it yet, what we will do then. Then, as soon as we, let's say, explain it to the company, to the supplier, why it's good, we will work with this supplier with open books. This supplier will, it's aggregator. It has different subcategories. It's buying hardware, hammers. It's, let's say, professionals and non-professionals. It's buying some installation software and hardware services. We will see all his incoming prices and split them by categories. And then after we will, first of all, we understand that we already know the market. We can very fast review from our knowledge database if there are any extra margin in some subcategories. For example, some suppliers is selling some cameras or some other kind of hardware or some cables, very expensive. We will do very fast RFIs. We will identify where we can get savings, and we will tell to our aggregators, suppliers, that look, you will get the same margin that you were planning to get, but we will help you. We will help you to select, even not to select a supplier, only by creating this competitive environment. Your subcontractor who selling you cameras will provide us a discount. You don't need even to, let's say, to change him. But as soon as he will understand that professional procurement are in place and already making a RFI, he will do, let's say, considerable discount. And that's how we will split all the spend by subcategories. Then we will identify which categories we can improve. Aggregator, main supplier, are okay with this because he will get his margin and he will show you the whole community, the whole British community via newspapers, because it will be public project. Plus, he will show you to his potential new customers that he is taking care about their money, about the money of taxpayers. That he, the aggregator, makes his best to lower down, let's say, the cost of his subcontractors. In the end, it's a kind of win-win. Plus, as soon as we will involve this company to a PR, for example, we make some video on newspaper and show how nice cameras and how well they are installed in the stadium, and people are safe now. It's already in public news, it's already in newspapers, and this company will understand it. Even they're not responsible for the time because they're contracting, but for the community, they're already responsible. So we will become partners with them in fulfilling the deadline. So that was more or less how it.
So Dimitri, could you just go on? Okay, Dimitri, could you just sort of summarize then, because you've dropped into a lot of detail. Could you just go back and summarize maybe the three or four steps?
Step one, to create a leverage. Step two, to get an access to spend of this aggregator by all his subcontractors. Spend three, to divide all his spend by subcategories. Spend four, to identify, let's say, in which subcategories we can achieve savings. Next step, to conduct very fast RFI in order to push existing subcontractor to give a discount. Step five, to involve, to use the publicity of this event to put not indirect obligation on this company to fulfill a deadline. And in the end, to cover this as a win-win situation for both us and for this company.
Very good, very good. So that was, I'll send you a percentage of my fee. That was very good, thank you for explaining that, very helpful. Anna, what do you have to contribute?
Well,
in fact, there is nothing to add left. Also discussed that the categories need to be divided into subcategories because it's really so big and diverse, and it's not that easy to manage as one category. It's just impossible. So we need to find out those subcategories where we had the biggest increase of expenses and spends. We could analyze why this increase, what this increase is connected with, and thus we can help our biggest general contractor to manage the subcategories which have the highest impact onto the increase of the budget. So we should begin the negotiations process and help him to manage the subcategories. What I cannot, well, I shouldn't say I cannot agree, but in fact, I would mention that we should be very cautious what Dmitry mentioned, that is the use of publicity for the management of the cost reduction, because it seems to me that maybe in Ukraine it would work, but it seems to me that in the European countries, you should be very cautious about that, as this is the budget of the state, of the taxpayers. Then you cannot give any preferences to any of the suppliers through this publicity. That is a bit of a risky thing.
Most probably you have not understand me correctly. You know, because yes, we've discussed it directly with Steve. I use publicity to make a leverage on this aggregator to uncover their subcontractors and their costs. Without this, he will not even show you how much and from whom he is buying this and this fee. Actually, we use transparency in order to make him to work with us in open book system. Then in each category, of course, the best way to run full-scale RFQ for everything, for hardware and so on. But we don't have time for full-scale RFQ. So what we understand, that we need to lower down the prices where I see that they're significantly higher on the market in very limited time. In this case, what is our tool? Our tool is RFI. We understand that most probably even existing subcontractor is ready to give at least 25% discount. And even after he will give this, he will be, let's say, 3–4% more expensive than a market and the results of full RFQ. We have to leverage some contractors that they should understand that they may lose this project. We have to show them, look guys, here is the results of our RFI. And your cameras, let's say, on your level of quality actually is a little bit more expensive. And you understand that this information now is already public. We are using, you know, it's open project, it's taxpayers' money. In GB, it's very important for the company. It's much more important in our country. And then, okay, yeah, we don't want that, let's say, all the British people will know that we decided to, let's say, make a huge money on them. No, yes, we understand. Yeah, okay, we cannot give you discount 20% and to get RFI, but we can give you 80. We will use publicity not to select some special supplier, but to conduct RFI very fast and to lower down. First of all, we will use publicity to make aggregator to open information about the incoming prices about subcontractors. Secondly, we will use publicity to make subcontractors to lower down their prices to market prices without running full-scale RFQ.
Ну, окей, я в принципе так и поняла.
Well, okay, that's what I understood, but in fact, it seems to me that transparency of the processes was from the very beginning there. Maybe Steve could correct me, but it seems to me.
There was at least I haven't seen in presentation that this aggregator already showed us all his incoming prices and all his costs are down. Maybe, you know, if he already showed this, if he wants us to procure for him, it's an easier way, of course. But I believe, you know, why he should show.
Okay, let me bring the slides back up, if I can just do that. So let's just deal with a couple of points that have been mentioned. There we are. Oh, someone's tired. So let's talk about some of the things that have been mentioned. Publicity. Certainly in Europe and the UK, it's not good publicity. So whenever there's publicity and the media, it's always bad news. It's always bad news that something's gone wrong. And if they know, if the supplier knows that bad publicity will come to them in a negative way, then they will respond to that, hopefully, to Dimitri's point, in a positive way, in, shall we say, sharing details around how their costs are made up. So you can certainly use the power of the media in your positioning. When Dimitri and I were talking, he started the conversation saying, obviously, that the supplier has the leverage, but this is about finding our own leverage. And certainly the media, to Anna's point, it can be leverage. We can use that as leverage, but it will be as a threat, shall we say, that the supplier will be blamed for spending taxpayers' money negatively. So that is a known threat or a risk, shall we say, a known risk to the supplier, that they could have bad publicity coming out of this if they don't work with us. Obviously, what's going on here is that the supplier just wants to get their money for the additional spend. The other thing is that Dimitri said was the RFI. Certainly you can do RFI formally, or you can't do RFQ. You haven't got the time and you can't change the supplier. So be careful with a formal RFI, but what you can do is, shall we call it, an informal RFI. You can do some benchmarking. You can do that through benchmarking to see the other types of costs that are available. Let's call them prices in this case, the other prices that are available. You can do a comparison on labor rates. You can do, obviously, as was said, IT. You can get some benchmarking comparison. That is another thing. In our particular case, we looked at the government. We looked at other contracts that the supplier had, where we could combine our efforts, our skills, to at least influence other contracts that the supplier had. So Dimitri's right, you can use your creative leverage with other significant contracts that they've got, but more importantly, other contracts that they want, meaning the next Olympic Games. So you can think about remember we said in the in the exercises this morning, that what is important to know your audience, what is important to Steve in that role play we did. And what is important to this company is that they actually want to grow their business significantly, and your recommendation is what they're looking for. Yes, they want your money, but they also want your recommendation. So you do have some leverage. It doesn't look like you have leverage, but you do have some leverage, and you can actually use that position to firstly get them to open, let's call it open their books, do the analysis in the spend analysis, and as I believe Anna said, to look at the categorization, to formally shape that, and to then do the analysis of spend in that category, then do some benchmarking, look at what's important to the supplier going forward, and use that. And ultimately, what happened? So, what do you think happened, Dimitri? What do you think if you did all these things? It went up to.
Completely right. But one thing, very specific thing. This company is interested first in getting the project. But second thing is advertise very, very well that they got the project. They're very reliable. That they're the best in order to get the project. And the same thing, which was a threat from first time to open the books, will become an advantage. Will doesn't look at. Please imagine. As soon as we have highlighted this way in newspapers that you done such a job, such a good way, plus you also save the taxpayers' money. This is kind of great advertising. When you will participate in the review for Olympic Games,
Дмитрий, извините, а я вас перебью. Дмитрий,
allow me to interrupt you. I do apologize, but first of all, your connection, your sound is just vanishing, you're disappearing. And I would like to just clarify which channel you used. Is it English? And we just don't hear you. Hello? I'd like to clarify. Which channel did you choose to speak in English?
Дмитрий. Дело в том, что...
Well, the thing is, when we are using Russian language, we're choosing the Russian channel, and we have already explained how the simultaneous interpretation is working. But if you're speaking English, the interpreters cannot interpret for those who need the interpretation into Russian. Please, if you choose the Russian channel, would you speak Russian, please? But unfortunately, the connection is really awful. But in fact,
Дмитрий, да, сейчас переводчик говорит.
We don't hear you at all.
Okay, can I pick things up, Dimitri? Can I take over?
Дмитрий, у вас сейчас очень плохая связь, мы вас через...
Dmitry, your connection is really poor. We can hear you only in a word or two. People are writing down that they don't hear you.
Yeah, I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna come in. Okay, so Dimitri's on the right track for sure. So what I was just summarizing there is that the way to do it is through the analysis, the category analysis, is to look at our spend, do some benchmarking, to use the leverage that we've got with the government, with what it is they want in the future, meaning future Olympic Games. Let's just go on to the outcome where we did, if you look at literally the bottom line, it actually, firstly, in the first phase of it, it went from 350 to 277 million. So there was an initial reduction by doing this, and then ultimately down to 200 million, and not with any reduction in the requirement. So we still got what we want, and yes, we still went from 100 million to 200 million, that's true, but it wasn't as much as the initial demand of 350 million. So my point about this, and again, you can see some of the bullet points there. You can see that we worked through this, we put in a new contract, we amended the contract, and by running through the using category management and using the category management approach, reduction in cost was made, but not around the requirements. The requirements were still satisfied. The additional people were brought in, And it was ultimately, I suppose you could say, you can see the delivery of this because it was a safe and secure games, but we didn't pay the demands that were initially given to us. And there is the 23,000 people that were recruited to guard the games. And there is the last slide, just splitting out some of the spend that we had initially had around some of the categories and how they were segmented. Okay, I want to just spend, we've only sadly got about 10 minutes left. I know it sounds incredible. It only seems like 5 minutes since we logged on. So I just want to go into the last session and just selectively look at some of the information that we've got in here. And this I've just called locking in the values. So a lot of what we've done with the business, with the stakeholders, is to align ourselves with the business. The next session we looked at was category management, of course, the 6-step process and how we can use that, again, not against a supplier, but use it as leverage, if you will. And now I just want to talk about the last session, which is we need to lock in all of this so it doesn't escape. We don't want all this value, all these cost reductions, or the quality of finding the right solutions. We don't want that to evaporate and escape. So I've mentioned to you that some of the models, this one is Porter's 5 forces around the bargaining power, which Dimitri very articulately presented to us, where the supplier's bargaining position was and the buyers, and looking for how we might create through alternatives or new entrants a negotiation leverage. Steeple is always helpful in terms of looking ahead and forecasting ahead to the future, and certainly in my view at the moment we should have seen more, we should have considered more that pandemics are going to affect and disrupt our business. So thinking about some of the things that affect us, our political leaders around the world, certainly the bigger countries with more leverage themselves, dictating what they're doing for trade and the environment and the political angle, it can affect our own businesses and our own procurement approaches. So certainly whether you use Steeple or whether you use Pestle, they're both pretty much the same. But thinking about the what's happening in technology, what's happening with law changes to labour, CIPS, which was mentioned yesterday in the presentations, have pushed very hard on what they call modern slavery, meaning not paying enough and some of the conditions that companies offshore to, particularly in the Far East. So thinking about modern slavery and how we treat our supply chains and the legal consequences for that. And we all know about the environment, we all know about Greta and her crusade to get us to think differently about the environment and the planet that we're living on. So all of these are things which our shareholders, our customers are thinking about. IKEA are on a mission to eradicate plastic. These all impact us when we're thinking about our future supply chains. I mentioned more than once yesterday and today, CrowdCheck. thinking about not all, as we learned this morning, not all of the spend categories that we have are the same. Some are collaborative and strategic, and maybe they do make up 80% of our spend, but they're probably only 20% of our supply base. And the others can be non-critical, meaning routine items that we put on our purchase to pay systems, and others can be single source suppliers. Certainly in the case of the Olympics, there were a number of what you might call boutique or single source suppliers, and they come with their own challenges. And so CrowdCheck teaches us to think about the supply and the spend categorization in 4 different ways. Not all of them should be treated the same way. And that will be on a financial, on what we spend, as well as the complexity of the market. Also think about how the supplier views us. Are you core to their business? So we just heard Dimitri speaking and Anna speaking about the supplier. Were the Olympic Games core to their business? And they were. However, we needed to realize that they weren't going to point that out to us. It was up to us to work that out, that we were actually core to their future plans. But they were trying to exploit us, exploit the situation, and not treat us as partners. So where you are on this is important. Where you believe the supplier should see us is important, and obviously making sure that they understand that as well. So locking in value means having contract and supplier relationship management. The contract is a fixed point. Having a contract with a service level agreement tells us what the outcome of the agreement is. As Sergey said this morning, we get an agreement with the business. That is, it's not necessarily a written contract, but it's an assumed contract. And here we have the shift towards going further with supplier relationship management, meaning innovation, meaning shared learning, shared development, more collaboration. Usually that's what it means in the supplier relationship management stages. But this is where we will find out if the contract and if the work that we've done in the selection process, in the negotiation process, and in the appointment of that supplier is actually delivering benefits. And obviously we measure that with key performance indicators. So here are some KPIs. On the left, you've got that you don't want more than 10, but here you have them. You know, they're not just, I think I heard somebody saying lots of cost reduction. It's all about price and cost. Obviously, there's more to it than that. There's minimization of risk, particularly in this current climate. We need to do risk assessment and how we minimize that. Action indicators, looking at our process for efficiency. So there's lots of ways we can measure value, not just cost and not just around price. I'm not going to spend too much time other than to say, you know, the use of project management and project management tools are important, particularly in that example I gave you of the Olympics. But project management, you know, is another 4 hours. It's another session that we would need. And then the rest of the slides are around the kind of e-tools that we might want to consider bringing in. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. So just a reminder there about Procurement Central and what we do in terms of our training. So let me come, there we are. Let me come back to you. So that really concludes it. It's coming up for 1 o'clock your time. So that concludes the workshop that I wanted to run with you. We've kind of been beaten a bit by time. Mariana, do we want to just come in and just go through the closeout piece with everybody? Okay, I don't know if Mariana's with us, but what I would just ask you is your closing comments or your closing questions, I guess.
Steve, да, у меня есть вопрос, я его пыталась...
Yes, Steve, I have the question. I wanted to write it down, but I didn't have enough time for that, so I will just list it. So, what do you think? How deep should be the technical knowledge in the category by the category manager or buyer? For instance, if we procure the technical equipment, should the buyer have a technical education for that? Because for me personally, it's always a stopping factor, and there are some hot discussions and contradictions between the directors and me, whether I should own some competences, some specific competences in the category management.
The answer, Anna, is yes, deep. Yes, I believe that we will be excluded from discussions and meetings and decisions if we do not have a deep knowledge of the category. So if you are looking to build a team around you and you're the CPO, obviously as a CPO, you need to have a broad range of competencies. So as a CPO, you may not be deep in all of them, but if you're putting a category management team together that covers, I think I said to you at the beginning that when I work in Asia and places like Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan, I work with lots of oil companies, and nearly all of those are engineering backgrounds. They have deep engineering degrees, and that gives them good knowledge to speak to the business, to get credibility with the business, to get respect from the business. And it also means that they can, how do you say, expose the supplier when they're trying to claim additional cost or to claim that the item does something. They will know, as an engineer, they will know. So the answer to your question is IT, marketing, media, whatever it may be, the answer is to get as deep a knowledge as possible. Just having procurement skills is not enough for category management.
Спасибо.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Next, so Mariana, I'm just saying any questions before we close out. Any more? Did we lose Dimitri, or is Dimitri still there? Natalia, any questions? Irana? Any questions? Any comments? Questions or comments? Okay, Mariana, do you want to close the session? Hello, Mariana? Okay, well, I'll on behalf of IPSM, I think I very much enjoyed it. Thank you for your contribution, and I wish you well for your careers and the rest of the day. Thank you very much. And goodbye.
Thank you. Друзья, я хочу поблагодарить.
Dear friends, I'd like to thank all of you from a different channel. I do apologize. There are some technical peculiarities. So thank you so much, Steve. We thank you for today's presentation, and we are waiting for you after lunch at the workshop of Darius Ratkevichus. And if there are any questions, you may write them down through us to Stephen. Stephen can always find in Facebook and LinkedIn. Stephen, would you mind if there are any questions posed in the social networks?
Fine, fine.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. The presentation of Stephen will be sent out. Thank you, friends. See you.